culture. Classic pop culture.
Thank you, Joe Mandica, Australia's gift to the world of pop music. Joe is the writer, producer, and performer of our pop culture theme song. And Joe, man, oh man, he is a true friend of our show. How are you doing, everybody? This is your pal and fellow fan of pop culture, Steve Ludwig, welcoming you to another edition of Steve Ludwig's Classic Pop Culture, right here at planetludwig.com. Congratulations. We have all landed safely and peacefully at Planet Ludwig. And here we are, show number 165. And how many times have we, as pop culture, and specifically music lovers, said to ourselves, what? Are you kidding me? This artist is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? How could they not be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? What is wrong with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? Well, my three guests are top-notch pop culture and music aficionados. San Francisco Bay Area music expert Buddy Sotello, Esquire. Dr. Mike Lano, noted rock photographer who has captured with his lens so many of the biggest names in music. And our oldest friend of the show, not age-wise, but he has been our biggest backer and for the longest time, author, movie producer, Evan Ginzburg. Now, our three guests, Buddy, Mike, and Evan, they co-host the weekly YouTube show, Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. We Zoomed our segment a week ago. And before that I had asked the three guys, I emailed Buddy, Evan, and Mike, hey listen, you guys are music lovers like me. Can you come up with a few artists who should be in the Hall of Fame but are not there yet? Okay, I figured they'd just come on the show with a list. Well, I gotta tell you, we taped the segment last week, and they really brought it. I mean, I couldn't have asked them to be any better. They made their choices, but they went above and beyond. They came so prepared, so full of information. I could tell that they really put time behind this, and I am so grateful. I couldn't have had three better people to take the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to task. As Peter Finch in the movie Network said, I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore. That's how the four of us feel. We're tired of you, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, for continuously getting it wrong. We are going to right these terrible wrongs right now on this classic pop culture show number 165. Let's go and meet our guests and wait until you hear the great choices Buddy, Evan, and Mike have made. Here we go. Now, audience, you know it's a special occasion because I even dusted my plastic tree for this one. This is a big one. We have, including myself, 4 rabid music fans. We have Buddy Sotello, Esquire, Dr. Mike Lano, Mr. Evan Ginzburg. We're going to learn more about all of them later on after the first round. But as I said in the intro, we are a little angry sometimes with the Hall of Fame because they don't get it right many times. They're leaving too many people out. We're going to do 5 rounds. We're each going to get 1 band performer for each round. And we'll have a little discussion about it each round. Okay? You guys all set?
Yep.
All right. Let's go the first round alphabetically. Buddy?
Buddy.
First
Wow.
round.
Okay. We're
Who
going
do you
first
have?
names first. Okay.
Just one.
I'm going to start off with probably, I'm going to start off slow with a number that I think band member that a lot of people don't really know that much about, but is from here in the Bay Area in Northern California. And his name is Roger Manning Jr. He's the keyboardist for Beck during the Midnight Vulture album area, but he also created 3 other great bands, one of which was named Jellyfish, the other was named Imperial Drag. Then he did a whimsical parody band called the Moog Cookbook, and he's currently in a band called the Licorice Quartet. And they're making music now. He's a fabulous musician, and he's a really nice guy. So I wanted to let him know that I'm nominating him for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You know, Russ, Beck is not in. It's funny you mentioned him playing with Beck. How about real quick, you guys, should Beck be in the Hall of Fame?
Of course.
Yeah. Evan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
And
Now-
bring Roger Manning in with him, because he
Beck
Yeah.
has a song that
Well-worthy.
they did the only time or one of the few times they did it live on Saturday Night Live, and it involved slide guitar, harmonica, all these different genres. I'm forgetting some of the other instruments, banjo. It was all of this cool stuff, and it was like a funky hip hop, almost a rap song. I'll try to look up the title of it, but it's one of his greatest songs ever from Midnight Vultures, and it was just mind blowing. He must have had 50 people playing behind him at SNL, squeezed into that tiny.
in a way, he's sort of a modern day Frank Zappa, in the sense that he doesn't mind pushing the boundaries of music, throwing in instruments that you wouldn't normally think belong together. And his lyrics are really out of this world. They're more psychedelic and less politically poignant as Frank Zappa. He was so literal. He would, if there was something he didn't like, he just wrote a song about it directly and said exactly what was on his mind. Beck is a little bit more ephemeral in the way he writes things, but it's certainly something that embodies a long history of music that you hear in soundtracks, on TV, in commercials, and well worthy of a Hall of Fame nomination.
All right. So once again, Buddy, you're number one. Your
Well,
first.
he's not my
choice.
number one. I'm 5.
Yeah,
I'm
your
going
first choice. First
yeah,
choice.
I'm escalating, I hope.
Okay.
So to a crescendo. And so Beck and Roger Manning Jr. deserve a spot in the Hall of Fame.
Alphabetically, Evan, your first choice.
Number 1 on my list would be the Spinners. I've seen thousands and thousands of concerts since the 70s. One of the 5 greatest shows I ever saw were the Spinners in the mid-70s with Felipe Wynn on lead. Nobody sounded like Felipe Wynn. They had 20 or so, top 10 singles that crossed over onto the pop charts. I do not believe in that's R&B and this is rock and roll. It's all fruit from the same tree. Anybody that really understands music knows that the early rockers were heavily influenced by blues and R&B. And the Spinners, who also have one of the greatest stage shows in history, and have been out there a mere 60 or so years since the late 50s. I mean, if anybody's deserving, it's these guys. Record sales, quality of music, vocals, I mean, on every level.
Yep. You know what, Evan? I was getting some tea and bagels and coffee this morning. On Sirius XM Games People Play came on. And I said, the Spinners have to be on Evan's list.
Yeah, and I mean, if you go on YouTube, there's a clip of them playing the Grammys at their peak, and they worked that crowd into a frenzy in about 5 minutes. I mean, I can't talk more highly of those guys. Even to this day, they're still great. I mean, and they're still
Rubber
out
Band
there.
Man is being used for commercials all the time. You're hearing their music used in commercials constantly, so they're getting exposed to the next generation of kids and everything that are also hearing it and adding it to they're like, hey, this is pretty cool song.
Mhm.
Their producer, Tom Bell, the music's timeless. It sounds just as fresh today
Yeah.
as it did back then. Sometimes you'll hear music from the 50s and 60s, and there's like angels singing in the background, and it's like terribly dated. But the spinners sound fresh. It's I don't know what else to say, but
Yeah.
that would be my number one choice.
And also, I want to say, Mike, you're next. But if anyone disagrees with one of our choices, you can chime in on that too. But so
I
far,
love the spinner.
yeah. Okay. Dr. Mike Lano, your first
Well,
choice.
I want to get into some grasses before, so I'll have to scratch the spinners off. Evan and I just emailed Evan about them, not regarding our podcast show here with you, but on the spinners a couple of days ago. So I'll have to scratch them off the list. I didn't bring out, I've got, like I said, at least probably 112 Beatles books. I think it's almost every book done on them since the 60s.
And probably with 112 different stories, Mike. Like
yeah,
different takes on it.
Derivative. But Steve and I were emailing back and forth about the Hall of Fame itself. First of all, and I'm not breaking any new ground here, but I think they should change the name of it to say the Music Hall of Fame. And Steve and I were kind of agreeing, because then, for so long until recently, now they're trying to cram in all the female and African American and people of color acts that they have ignored. And so now they're, cramming them in. I mean, so on this year's list, they have Tina Turner finally as a solo artist, not with Ike, and Carole King, who should have been in there, and even the Go-Go's. Years, I mean, Carole King, come on.
I think Carole King is in as a songwriter, but even as a performer for
not as a solo act.
Yeah,
but Mike,
Jeffrey, what's her face, her male 60s, early 60s songwriting partner. And you remember another act that's not in there, but they're not on my list. They should be, the Monkees, and Neil Diamond and Carole King wrote a ton of their, amongst many other people. And you can't say, oh, they didn't play their instruments, because after the first year, when they took control and the show got canceled because they wanted to do their own thing, they were playing their own instruments and they were in concert. So we have that. And so Jan Wenner creates this thing. This is his book. So I'm not in my room where I could pull out all of these books.
You got me worried there, Mike. You said I'm not in my room where I could pull out my, and then I kind of went in a second.
No, that's a host
Family
on
show.
CNN. That's a host on CNN who whipped it out. Whipped it out Wednesdays, to quote Opie and Anthony. But here, so let's call this maybe the Music Hall of Fame, so we can include
modern music. The Hall of Fame of modern
Billy
music.
Eckstein and Sarah Vaughan aren't in it. And so if we're going to include all these genres, hip hop to, I'm sure at some point we'll have the soft speaking style of Billie Eilish in the Hall of Fame that I really don't care for. But everybody, what is it based on? Is it based on accomplishments, influence, worldwide number ones?
I'm not sure anybody knows for sure, Mike.
Oh,
All right, but now listen, does that mean, and I agree, I mean, for it to be more inclusive, the name should be changed, but do we include classical music? Beethoven, Bach?
No, I'd say
We call it the
modern music.
music hall.
Well, I guess we'd have to see if they already have existing halls of fame, which I doubt for classical music. They should. I mean, are there halls of fame for book authors or movies or directors or screenwriters? Or, TV does have a hall of fame, but film and other aspects of art do not. And
wrestling has a hall of fame, but there's no building.
No, that's like Vince's Hall of Fame is in his mind, Vince McMahon for wrestling. But another thing here is, it's just very frustrating to me, is the nominating committee is this clandestine, opaque. Nobody knows what the criteria are for them, who they are. We at least
political.
nominate acts.
I hear it's very political.
Yeah. Well, just go to Steve. You and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, and you asked us to do this. Steve Miller really let him have it on the stage, and everybody felt inside it's truthful, because he was pissed. They say, "Oh yeah, it's such a big honor for you," and we cap it off. You can only have 2 family members attend. You have to buy tickets for anybody beyond that. They want them to. They push them to buy a few tables.
Yeah, right.
So that is a real pisser, and Steve was right on with that. So you have that, but at least, so they have a clandestine, secretive nominating committee, but then we at least know that they're, and they don't really have artists in there. The people that vote from the nominations, I don't know why don't they just, say we're going to have 20 inductees this year, some deceased or whatever. And
Why not have a vote and have people vote on it and pay money?
well, they do
to
have people that
nominate?
vote on it. So they have this nominating committee no one knows anything about, but then the voting committee that then picks from whatever that year's nominations are comprised of fans and music writers and
Why don't you have the
reviewers.
public vote? Why don't you have the public vote and raise money for charity while you're doing it? That would be.
I had Terry Sylvester. He took over for Graham Nash in the Hollies. He was a guest, and he's in the Hall of Fame with the Hollies. And on the day that we were doing the interview, he had just gotten his ballot in the mail from the Hall of Fame. So everyone who's elected gets a ballot. So he's going through the ballot, and he said, I don't know who this person is. I never heard of this group. So even that's a little, shaky how they're, I mean, and I'm not putting down Terry Sylvester because he was nice enough to share the ballot with us. But I know, all right, let's not get too far off the path. So it should be
let me tell you who
something
my
different.
pick is. These are in no particular order. The Spinners were
Neither
in
am I.
my group. I will put them aside because I have way more than 10 anyway. But Wendy Carlos, who I emailed you about, Steve, but not the others. Wendy Carlos was originally born a male, turned female, and then became the god for electronic music. All you have to do is
good call. That's a really good call.
Pick up the score to the Disney, I think it was 84 movie Tron with Jeff Bridges in it. She did all of that.
Oh, is that right?
I have some of her Moog on Bach. She did some Bach Moog stuff, and it's amazing.
But she gave birth to everybody else. So they've had people that were waiting, and Kraftwerk, I think, were waiting 2 to 3 years. They were nominated, they weren't brought in. They're finally in. I'll tell you who the nominees are very quickly for this year, unless Steve has them.
No, go ahead, Mike.
She begat Devo, anybody doing electronic work, and Kraftwerk is pretty much recognized as the most famous, selling the greatest number of global albums. I shot a number of their concerts. They were all out of this world, like Bjork concerts. Bjork's not on my list. She should be in there. So this year's inductees out of the nominations list, if you can believe it, Carole King and Tina Turner, who are not in, Go-Go's, who are not in, Foo Fighters, Todd Rundgren, man, did that guy deserve to go in there. Jay-Z, as I mentioned, Kraftwerk, the greatest electronic group of all time. Gil Scott-Heron, who Evan and I have talked about repeatedly for probably 20 years going in. Billy Preston, how could this guy not have been like in the first 5 years or something? The fifth Beatle, Randy Rhoads. So there's this year's, it's kind of ridiculous. And in that way, it does remind me of Vince McMahon's Hall of Fame. It's so political, ridiculous.
I don't want to be mean about the Foo Fighters because I absolutely love them, but they could wait their turn for some of these other bands like the Spinners.
I love them as well, right?
I know, but they didn't have a say in it. It's just who is doing the nominating. And the criteria is, I think you've had to recorded your first album at least 25 years ago.
Right.
As long as you've been in music 25 years and published.
That would qualify.
Yeah, definitely.
There's only one original Spinner still alive. Honor these guys while they're here, not after
That's
they're
a great
gone.
point.
Well, Evan, if I can just piggyback on your point, the year that the Dave Clark Five were eligible, they were going to be inducted, but Jan Wenner, and this is fine, but Jan Wenner wanted more African American groups in. I forget who he put in, and he said, we'll do Dave Clark Five next year. Well, between that time and the next year, Mike Smith, the lead singer, died. And he didn't get a chance to, be inducted into the Hall of Fame. He was inducted, but he wasn't able to be there. So your point is perfectly taken. Like, come on. Like, I agree with Buddy. Foo Fighters can wait. They'll get in, but they should wait a bit.
Do they have a limit on acts? Like, why should, it shouldn't be a ridiculous number because a lot of them are just mentioned in passing, like at the Academy Awards. So they don't have big performances and speeches for every single act. So, if...
Hey, by the way, Mike, do you have a fifth nominee, or I think I got lost somewhere in there that you?
No, well, Mike, you really haven't given us your first nominee, have you?
I said Wendy Carlos.
Oh, Wendy Carlos. Okay.
I knew that.
You got lost.
She was, and the weird thing about that was, she dates back to like the late 50s, But Mickey Dolenz of the Monkees was the first guy in an act in pop and rock music to play a Moog synthesizer during a song. So it wasn't the Beatles, surprisingly, with Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which had some electronic elements put in there, and some other groups too.
All right, Steve, it's the spotlight's on you.
All right. You know, Mike, we think alike. I'm keeping them on my list. I had the Monkees as my choice, as my first choice, because I don't think just because they didn't play on their first two albums instruments or write their songs, I don't. From every album after that they played and some of their songs were written. I don't think that should matter at all, because you have the Great Temptations, the greatest Motown group, in my opinion, and there's so many. They don't write their own songs. That was Holland, Dozier and Holland mostly. They don't play any instruments. So that should never come into a thought about whether a group should be it or not, my opinion.
Pleasant Valley Sunday is one of the greatest songs ever.
Carole King.
It's yeah, but it lyrically, it's about as perfect a song as you can put together for what it's supposed to be about and the mood that it conveys. I can't think of a better song, and it's one that I play a lot of times.
Yeah, and I think with the Monkees too, they led the way to like TV shows like The Partridge Family. You know, bands that are. I just think they opened a lot more doors than they're given credit for. Anybody disagree with that? And it's fine.
Which is a guilty pleasure. I'd never really watched. It was on ABC at the time, Johnny Cash's show, but he had the Monkees on there, but it did not include Peter Tork. And I think the show was one of the zillion that Linda Ronstadt, man alive, could she sing?
Mike, that was a great show, the Johnny Cash show.
It was.
There's a lot on YouTube too for those who are into it.
It's got Derek and the Dominoes with Clapton in it.
Yeah.
As far as the Monkees, I think the stigma of it being a TV show hurt them in the beginning, but 50, 60 years later, people recognize these guys were great musicians who created timeless music, and I certainly think they're deserving. And again, two of four of them are gone. Do it while somebody's here to enjoy it.
Yeah, they were good comedians too.
We should call that the Spinners' philosophy, not being funny. You know, that's while they're here, do it. Two now. That's four. Round two. And let's see. We started with Buddy last time, alphabetically. Evan, let's start with you.
Okay. Well, I made my point that there should be more R&B and people shouldn't go out of their minds if there's more R&B. So let me go back to rock. I love the band Squeeze. I just think I think Squeeze. They do we used to say perfect 3-minute pop tunes. I mean, they're flawless. Yep. And if you listen to the lyrics, they're insightful, they're poignant. And my criteria, we still don't know what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame's criteria is. My criteria is quality, longevity, a great stage show. And these guys more than qualified. And ironically, the last concert I saw before COVID hit was last February at Madison Square Garden. It was Hall & Oates and Squeeze, and Squeeze.
What a double bill!
Still great.
What a double bill!
They changed the name from UK Squeeze. I forget the legalities. They were doing stuff in the US, and there was already a UK Squeeze or something like that. So they just
I don't know, but Pulling Muscles from the Shell, Black Coffee in Bed. It's brilliant.
When I was
Tempted by the Fruit of Another. Yeah.
When I was in Israel on a 6-week trip, the bus that I was on had only 3 tapes. One was a tape of Jewish folk songs. Another was Madness, the Madness Greatest Hits.
This is great.
The other was Squeeze's Greatest Hits. So those songs are permanently like etched.
Yeah.
Because at the time, we're talking like this was 1981. So those albums had just come out, the Squeeze and Madness albums had just come out. So every time I hear a Squeeze song, I think about my trip in Israel. So it's permanently etched as part of my background.
I mean, what makes a great song? You remember the words. The words touch you. The words mean something to you. And this is going back 40 years. You could go back 70 or 80 years to classic musicals, you know, Rodgers and Hammerstein, and you remember those words.
You don't have an 80s music British scene without including Squeeze as part of it. That's just basic, plain and simple. They are ingrained in the British sound as much as like Elvis Costello or Madness at that point. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, me too, Evan.
I almost nominated them. They're just on the outside of my
Number 6 in the top 5.
Yes, very close. They're very close.
Mike, let's go with you second. Do you agree with Evan's choice, by the way, of Squeeze?
Oh yeah, no,
Okay.
I was going to say the music videos they had, they were amongst the earliest of the first and second year of MTV that really captivated. They were the most artistic and funny. There was quite a few great, don't get me wrong, there was a ton of great music videos those first couple of years too, before they finally got with the program and had Michael Jackson's Beat It and so on, because they had no black acts. So it was basically White Boys Network.
Well, who's your second choice, Mike?
Well, these are in no particular order for me.
Yeah,
either of mine. I'm going to say the Turtles. You know, we're talking about legendary.
Turtles are great.
Yeah,
the Turtles, man. And then, of course, they begat the two most talented members coming out of there, Flo and Eddie. Evan can talk about them a bit, and doing stuff with legendary genius Frank Zappa. Can you imagine the three of those guys together sitting down and just BSing? The Turtles, and they still held up. I kind of go out of my way to see nostalgia acts, even though, I mean, my tastes run all over the map, but saw them at one of their Happy Together tours where they had members of Three Dog Night and a lot of great.
He's also not in the Hall of Fame.
Right?
Yeah.
Three Dog Night either.
I have to scratch them off my list. Yeah, isn't that simple? Who is making this list? Why don't we create our own Hall of Fame? It's
a real Rock Hall of Fame. Yeah, you know, Mike, I just want to piggyback on what you said too. I used to see the Flo and Eddie show between Christmas and New Year's at the Bottom Line in Greenwich Village. Those were totally wild, wacky shows. I mean, but great musically. I'm with you on the Turtles.
What happened to the other? What were there? 3 other members? Because even on their earliest Ed Sullivan appearances, and you see them, you know, sort of playing with each other. The lead singer tried to sing, and then the other guy with the afro is kind of trying to make him break. And so you could see those guys are going to leave. But like, what happens to these remaining other 3 guys? Like, if the Turtles went in, would they even be invited, or would they go in as Flo and Eddie? You know, I'm sure they'd go in as the Turtles. But I
think that, you know, the Turtles played their own instruments as well. And I just said that they shouldn't matter, but if it does matter to the whole, there's another reason why they should be in. You guys want to hear a quick story? Howard Kalin, Eddie. Howard Kalin, his real name is Howard Kaplan, but he changed it to go into the business because he didn't want it to sound Jewish. He was afraid that would be trouble for him. So his real name is Howard Kaplan, but he uses Howard Kalin. I don't know why I threw that in there, but there you go. All right, Buddy, I'm the host, so I'm going to let myself go last each time. But you're next, Buddy. What's your second choice?
Well, I want to go back to the Bay Area and to a band that shaped the sound of the Bay Area. You can't have the 70s in the Bay Area without this kind of change from Jefferson Airplane, which is in the Hall of Fame, to Jefferson Starship, who is not in the Hall of Fame. And Jefferson Starship is a distinctly different band. One of the reasons why I want to make sure that they get in twice is because my high school friend growing up, you already heard from Mike Lano dropping how he knew Danny Elfman. Well, I'm high school friends with Jessica Freiberg, who's the daughter of David Freiberg, the guitarist for Jefferson, both Airplane and Starship. But Jefferson Starship was a distinctly different band, had a distinctly different sound, And I think in a lot of ways, if you want to go song for song, I think they were better than Jefferson Airplane. I
Now,
know
how
that.
many different members were there, Buddy?
Well, you added the big
Mickey Hart?
difference was adding Mickey. Yeah, it was Mickey Thomas.
And
Mickey
Grace
Hart.
Slick, who I brought, Evan, remember we had her on for about an hour and a half on
Yeah.
Legends. I brought her on and I said something like, boy, did I have a crush on you in like 67? And she was going off on that comment for a while, you know, like trying to get my phone number. And stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's I mean, if you just want to talk about how influential that sound was in the Bay Area to have Jefferson Starship, it has woven itself completely into the fabric of the history of this town throughout the 70s and 80s. You really, and even into the 90s, because a lot of the stations were playing Jefferson Starship stuff in the 90s, obviously. It didn't just disappear just because the calendar moved forward. That it is a band of incredible depth, and their songs mean so much to a community that I really want to make sure that if you're here in the Bay Area, but even if you're not in the Bay Area, I think you can look at Jefferson Starship as a real mover and shaker in the history of rock and roll.
That's an interesting choice, Buddy. You know, I wouldn't have thought, but you made your point to me. I'm on board with you now, but I wouldn't have thought Jefferson Starship, Jefferson Airplane as that different. But yes, now that you've made your point, I see what you mean.
Well, the core members, except for like two left, I forgot if the blonde guitarist, so I'm bad on names because I'm in approaching the 65-year range. I just can't recall his name. This guy's a total legend for Airplane, but he played a little bit with them and then took off. And the book that Grace Slick sent me that she autographed, her autobiography, which came out a couple of years before she did, you know, I brought her on the show with Ev.
Are you talking about John Cipollina?
But let me finish. She mentioned in Starship that she had to play by the rules, which she wasn't accustomed to doing. So she had to buckle down and do all this stuff. But she did some great work. If you look at, although I think she was just singing background on Sarah, that's one of the greatest music videos ever from Starship. It is really something. The music, obviously the song is perfect, but the music video, with it comes to a quiet moment, they're out in a field and you just hear the wind rustling the wheat leaves around this huge field. It's like the field of dreams. It's really quite something.
I named my daughter Jane in part because of the song Jane. So there you go, right there.
Were you thinking of Paul Kantner, Mike? Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
Paul.
he actually played
yeah,
along with Mickey and Grace for a time, and then he got pissed off because they were, you know, like a pop band. They were not what Jefferson Airplane was, you know, which was super influential. Now, if you look at their induction at the Hall of Fame as Jefferson Airplane, they did throw some nods to Starship, and there were some members of Starship that weren't part of Airplane. So they did, but this is like our Hall of Fame we're talking about, and just as a separate group is what. But
the way the Hall of Fame should be, yeah. All right, my, you know, by the way, Mike, I stepped on you when you were talking about the Turtles. Did you have anything else you wanted to add? Because I threw it, Buddy.
They were always incredible, and they're fun to this day. They've done cruises, Happy Together cruises, where they bring all these great, you know, whoever they can find on these tours, like Mitch Ryder, who belongs in the Hall of Fame. They've had a number of shows I've seen. And if you can see them wherever they come, they usually do about 50, 60 cities, you know, pre-COVID.
Seen that tour half dozen times.
Yeah, they're fun. It's always fun. Even though they're no longer really Flo and Eddie, they're just a lot of fun.
Yeah. Okay. My second choice, and again, not in any particular order either, is War.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think they should have been in years ago. They started out, it was Eric Burden and War. That was the first two albums. And then, I mean, I love Spill the Wine and all, but I think they really took off when they just became on their own, War. And there was just so, I mean, such an infusion of R&B, funk, rock, reggae, a little bit of psychedelia, but not a lot. But I think that's really a big overlooking by the
Latin rhythms, all kinds of Latin
Oh,
rhythms.
Latin rhythm? Yeah, absolutely. I just feel War should definitely be, and I do want to make, I want to make a point that if you're going to see War live, the real War band is called the Lowrider Band because, oh my goodness, I'm going to forget the name of the bassist, but War is just that one member. And the Lowrider are 4 other members, but because of copyright problems. So if you want to see a lot of members of War, you should really check out the Lowrider Band. But that's my second choice. Okay, now I wanted to just show this. It's backwards, of course, right?
No, you had it right.
Yeah.
That's backward.
Okay. This is actually, I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice. And a friend of mine actually gave me this out of the gift shop. And this is the big sign that's in front of the Rock Hall of Fame. And this is pretty cool. I have this on my shelf, but I just wanted to show that to you guys. In a little bit, we're going to talk about some memorabilia. But
Steve, let me ask you
just
briefly, today's music, when you see the Grammys, etc., the Billboard TV specials, there's very little rock. It's all of this stuff that's like completely annoying to me, from the speak quietly type singing. You know what I'm talking about? Then these groups that are just all produced, way overproduced, and they're all interchangeable, or the Taylor Swift stuff. And I'm going, okay, so where's the Bachman Turner Overdrive? Where's Iggy Pop? Where's real rock and roll? Where's real music?
You know, it's funny, Mike, because I mean, you said you're pushing 65. I'm 67, so I even go back further. I remember when the Grammy Awards wouldn't even, I mean, the Beatles early on, they hardly won any Grammy Awards because rock wasn't even considered, music as much as it was in the 70s and 80s. And then it kind of, like you said, now it's tailed off again. But yeah, I DVR the Grammy Awards and the Billboard Awards. And then if I hear something about them the next day, I'll watch it, but I don't watch it live anymore. And I know I'm sounding like an old fogey, but.
Oh, just tape it and fast forward to whatever few good parts.
Yeah.
There usually aren't any.
I want to let our listeners know that we're joined, like I said, by 3 actually co-hosts now of Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. And let's go around the horn. Buddy Sotello, Esquire. Buddy, real quickly, well, not real quickly, but in a thumbnail, give us a little background. I know you're one of the fine wrestling managers around.
In Northern California, yeah. I started in the year 2000 with All Pro Wrestling here in the Bay Area, and that's where I met Mike Lano. And through Mike Lano, I got to know Evan Ginzburg and was a guest on his show. I've managed all throughout the Bay Area in federations like All Pro Wrestling, was featured in the movie Beyond the Mat, and Pro Wrestling Iron, where I worked with shows with Brian Danielson, and also I managed Nigel McGuinness for an evening. Then I started my own federation called California Championship Wrestling. It was in the Central Valley of California, and we had Brian Cage on one of our shows, and we had Timothy Thatcher wrestled a whole lot of matches for us. Really great kid. Then when the apocalypse happened, and then I worked for Wrestling for Charity, and we had Davina Rose on the card, and she, of course, turned into Bailey. I've been lucky to be exposed with a lot of young stars that have become big names in the WWE and AEW and TNA and so forth. So I've been very fortunate for that. And it only took the apocalypse to happen for Evan Ginzburg and myself to say we want to do a show. We talked about doing a show together, a coast to coast show together for years. And when we were both totally shut in, thanks to COVID-19, we decided to put this Zoom, a Skype show together called Wrestling and Everything Coast to Coast. And we've done it now for about 1.5 years. And
I can't believe it's been that long already. Really?
I know. Well, time didn't fly for a long time. And now that COVID is fortunately going back in most places,
Yeah.
especially here in the Bay Area, time is moving much faster. But that's how I got to know you. And just want to say, I grew up my whole life here in the Bay Area, so or in California. So my list is going to be very like Bay Area centered, as you'll see as we keep moving
All right.
forward. So,
Now, fans of the show will recognize Buddy and Evan. They were on 6 months ago, perhaps, or
yeah.
and then
again,
my
like
goodness,
how
a
fast
few years
time-
ago, before we had the Zoom and everything, Dr. Mike Lano was a guest of mine as well. And as those of you with great memories, all three of these gentlemen, I use that term loosely, but all three of these gentlemen are well versed in music. Dr. Lano, you have a great background in rock photography as well as wrestling and things like that. Why don't you share a little bit of that with us?
Well, most people think of me as having shot since the 60s for all of our newsstand magazines around the world. It's decreased in number, but actually I'm helping start one that's on its third issue, published out of Canada. So this is a physical newsstand wrestling magazine. You know, it's a weird genre. And oddly enough, today on the CBS's Good Morning America, or this Sunday morning, the CBS show,
Right.
Jane Pauley hosting, they did a feature on the rock music as well as the history of magazines, genre magazines. And they had everything there. They had, I'm getting off topic, but the one thing that I just laughed out loud for about 5 minutes, they had a magazine in the 50s devoted to people with hand fetishes.
Finally, they're covering that.
Who's got that? I mean,
I didn't know that existed.
I was weirded out with the foot thing, but
Everything exists, Evan.
Yeah.
it's not boxing and MMA. I used to shoot Gene LaBelle, unfortunately not training Ronda Rousey, but training a lot of folks for MMA, and Japan would send, I'm getting to the music, people to
Time,
connect
Mike.
with judo. Gene LaBelle, this guy who sadly wasn't in the Olympics, but was an Olympic caliber judo sensei. Music wise, I grew up before I spent 40 years in the Bay Area down in Southern Cal. And I would go and shoot at the Whiskey A Go-Go and Gazzari's on the Strip, both on Sunset Boulevard there.
Who are some of the people you saw at the Whiskey? Like, I'm putting you on the spot, I know.
The Doors towards the end.
May I ask you something before you even go any further? What kind of shape was Jim Morrison like? I understand he had some.
Yeah, he was a mess on that show. There was a lot of songs.
I heard that about his appearances at the Whiskey.
But still a god. You know, my wife gets angry, you know, after she saw that movie that had the very good actor from Top Gun in it. I can't think of his name now, who played Jim Morrison. She just gets mad because she saw what a womanizer and an abuser Morrison was.
Val Kilmer.
Yeah, Val Kilmer and Meg Ryan played the female.
Kyle MacLachlan was in that too, from Twin Peaks. He played.
And he just played FDR on PBS. Can you believe
Yes,
it?
I didn't see it, but yeah.
So also, I mean, pretty much everywhere. And then when I came up to San Francisco, so I was shooting, I was there the opening night for the Mystic Nights of the Oingo Boingo, because I went to junior high with Danny Elfman, whose
Wow.
brother is married to Jenna Elfman, the actress. That's why she took that last name. But they were a jazz kind of fusion band. And Elfman used to trade lyrics. You know, I never missed one of their shows. They were, you know, they debuted at the Westwood Playhouse,
Mm-hmm.
and he would trade lyrics, singing with a female jazz great, and a lot of percussion, unusual percussive instruments. And then by about 76, 77, he kind of booted out a lot of folks in it, focused on himself, changed the name to just Oingo Boingo, and they were sort of a new wave punky act, although they still kept some of their tubes-like elements. There's a band I didn't think of that should be in all.
Oh, you're stealing my thunder.
Sorry.
Stealing my thunder.
Anyway, well, I'm getting to this thing, and man alive, they would have all of the horn players dressed up in Godzilla outfits, and they did a huge stage act that was insane, like the Tubes' great act.
That's actually the first live major concert I went to, was Oingo Boingo.
The Tubes I saw in LA at can't think of the theater now, on Hollywood Boulevard, prior to, of course, seeing him a zillion times in the Bay Area. But then I moved to the Bay Area about the time of punk to go to dental school up there. And I shot at what later became known as the Jim Jones Temple on Gary, the Gary Temple. And I saw everybody there. Rollins, I can't think of the name of his group.
Henry?
Black Flag, yeah, Henry Rollins and Black Flag. The Dickies about 1 million times that came up from LA that were out of this world. The Dropkick Murphys a zillion times. They would be included on the joint wrestling and rock shows like Lucha Vavoom and Johnny Legend's Incredibly Strange Wrestling, which had a lot of bands playing.
Mm-hmm.
I shot Devo's very first LA show at the Whiskey, and also when they had a New Year's Eve show, I'm guessing about 77 at the Fabulous Forum that was just out of this world. So then to shoot them at a corporate IBM gig about 3 years ago, and getting to talk to, I can't think of it, Jerry of Devo. They lost one of the two brothers, but
Casal?
Jerry Casal owns a winery. I had a friend of mine who passed, the keyboardist for the Doors, on with Evan when we did the show Legends for a zillion years, and he was up there with his own winery and everything. Yeah, Ray Manzarek, and
that's who Kyle MacLachlan played in the movie. I couldn't think. Yeah.
Wow.
So let's hear from Evan.
Anyway, so now I'm doing a couple of podcasts, but the big one is, of course, every Saturday night with Evan and Russ.
Yes. Nice addition. Now, a few minutes ago, Evan, Buddy mentioned my favorite, up until about a year or so ago, my favorite wrestling documentary, Beyond the Mat, but that's been replaced by one that you helped produce, 350 Days. So my buddy, Mr. Evan Ginzburg, I know you have a book coming out too. Why don't you just bring us up to date?
Sure. I was associate producer on The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke, and I had a cameo acting with him in the film. 350 Days, associate producer, starring Bret Hart, superstar Billy Graham, 36 Legends. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to appreciate it. It's basically rock and roll, sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Mm-hmm.
It's called 350 Days because these guys were on the road up to 350 days. Greg Valentine was in the movie, told me he did 320. Bret Hart said he did 330 days. So imagine being away from your home, groupies throwing themselves at you, drugs being offered, injuries, pain, loneliness. You don't have to be a wrestling fan to appreciate the film. And I have a book coming out called Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets. And basically what happened during the COVID house arrest that we were all under, it was just so brutal, the 15 or so months, that I sat down and wrote 100 stories about my various lives in wrestling, in the classroom as a teacher, and working in film, and 100 short stories. And
do we have a release date, Evan, on the book?
It should be out in August,
Nice.
which theoretically could be September, but it's scheduled for August. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So listeners and viewers were caught up pretty much. We'll get back with the guys. All right. Round 3. Mike, you're going to lead us off right now.
I'm going to do a twofer. I'm trying to cram in some names. These are names from the 60s, but they still play today. They still have their voices. They didn't necessarily write all their own songs, but Johnny Rivers did. So I'm nominating Johnny Rivers and Tom Jones, who crazily.
I can't believe you said both of them.
Johnny Rivers, there's another guy, and I tried doing this when Evan and I were doing Legends, bringing anybody I could think of. Like I had one show where I brought Roberta Flack and Judy Collins on the same 2-hour period. They're not in the Hall of Fame, which is crazy. I don't know. I was trying to look at what you told me to look at online to see if Mitchell is even in it, because there's so few female acts. I mean, Stevie Nicks went to town on this. It's like basically her, Linda Ronstadt, maybe one or two others before they got the balls to put in when they should have put in forever. Carole King and Tina Turner as a solo, but Diana Ross is not even in there as a solo. So I'm just looking now at forgotten male singers. I mean, Tom Jones had his own ABC show that was actually from the BBC.
How can he not be in? I feel.
Buddy
Evan, what do you guys think about Tom Jones first?
Tom Jones is great. He's still great at 80.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he's producing new music. I mean, he did that thing in the 80s where he sang with a punky group,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Had a huge hit, with the Prince's Kiss,
yeah,
with Art of Noise, who themselves
Art of Noise, that's
should
it.
be in the Hall of Fame. They were so innovative and cool, and they did the score for that TV show in the 80s where it was that guy's head. It was what was that guy? It
Max Headroom.
Max Head from MTV. What was his name?
Oh yeah, you
Max
got it, buddy.
Headroom.
Yeah, Max Headroom. And Art of Noise did most all the score for that show, besides producing all this incredibly weird, different, fun music, which we're missing today. I think the 80s for me, it has nothing to do with Tom Jones or Johnny Rivers, although they had hits in the 80s. The 80s was the last really fun music period, although the 90s with grunge rock kind of, God knows it's far better than what's going on today.
All right, now we agree on Tom Jones, Buddy. Evan, how about Johnny Rivers? Do you agree? I agree with both of those.
Johnny Rivers is great. I've seen him live.
Yeah, me too. Buddy, you think Johnny Rivers should be in?
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those where he's gone now. Is he still alive?
No, he's still alive.
Oh, he's still alive. Okay.
He's still
he's
part
of
of
the
Bears and stuff.
give it to him while he's still around group.
Mike, Johnny Rivers.
That's why I was a little.
He was
he's an underrated guitarist. Johnny
But
Rivers.
he was the house band for the Whiskey A Go-Go before the Doors took that title over in '67.
Oh, okay.
He was there for years. He would open shows, close them. He was sort of the MC at the Whiskey A Go-Go. And, he's a god there. He has his footprints, his handprints at both the Grauman's, I forget which movie he was in, a couple of teen movies, but also he's got a star on the Walk of Fame, as does Tom Jones has too, for music and TV.
Because in the situation like Dick Dale, who died just a couple of years ago. He isn't in the Hall of Fame, and I'm beginning to feel like there is something to be said about getting stuff to people instead of giving it to them posthumously.
And for those who don't know, Dick Dale was the king of surf guitar.
I do know.
Innovator. So that should have meaning that you created a genre of music.
Yeah, how many people were influenced by him, Evan? You're right.
Of course.
Two artists who aren't in the Hall of Fame, Jan and Dean. Can you believe it?
Yeah, yep, Jan and Dean.
They're not in.
No. Buddy, you're next.
So, well, if I didn't use up Dick Dale already as a nominee, who really was right there, another one of those on the bubble types. But I want to go back to the Bay Area, and even though Mike stomped all over it and burst the bubble, I was going to nominate the Tubes as a band.
Oh, okay, Fee Waybill, yeah.
Yeah, Fee Waybill is one of the great poet laureates of our generation, unrecognized as such, but his lyrics completely encapsulate that time of the 80s. No other person, I think, understood what life in California was like in the 80s. Maybe Huey Lewis, but probably mostly Fee Waybill. He totally understood what life was like around here. And he wrote about it. And he wrote about it in the most uncompromising, direct, I'm going to put my finger right on the dot of the attitude of California and expose it to the world. And it was brilliant. The whole band is brilliant. I had a chance to see them once live, and I was just absolutely blown away with how good they were and how their sound translated so much from their album to the actual sound that you would hear live. Not every band does that. And the completion backwards principle.
Oh, my favorite Tubes album, by the way.
Find me a bad song on that album. Every song on there is a gem.
Talk to you later.
Find that on every album. So I love the Tubes. Love
All right, Mike and Evan, are you guys in with the Tubes?
Yeah, it's not just the 80s though, because the concerts I saw now, the theater was the Pantages Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, basically right across the street where Jimmy Kimmel does his show. But that's where I saw him in like 73 or 74. They were doing stage acts that were like the Rocky Horror Picture Show play. Out of this world. Again, I told you that's who influenced, bands to follow. The Tubes concerts were just out of this world. They influenced Meatloaf. Says he got the whole idea for his later stage show, and he was in the original production, which I saw, of a Rocky Horror Picture Show that began in England, or it came
He's in the movie as well, right?
Roxy Theater, yeah. But
Yeah.
the acts, so I got to see them before they had those MTV hits that Russ was talking about from the 80s. And in the 70s, they gave entertaining shows like you cannot believe. Costume changes, fireworks on stage, simulated sex on stage. It was all kinds of stuff. So I don't know if, Buddy, did you get to see that element, the 80s?
I was 10 years old. They weren't letting me into shows like that. So I had,
But I'm saying
I got to see
80s, the concerts that you saw the concert you saw in the 80s, was it a wild show or was it just straight singing?
Actually, I saw them in the very early 90s, but it was just straight singing because they were.
And how did Sputnik Spooner get his name? Where did that goofy stage name come from?
Well, the Sputnik satellite from the Russian satellite.
Yeah, but the Spooner part too. Like we thought that was a drug reference to a spoon, a Coke spoon or something. We weren't sure back.
It was the 80s. It was the 80s in Northern California.
I'm talking 70s. I'm talking.
And I'll tell you, throw in
And
the
the
60s too, Mike, because everything was double entendre, or we thought that anyway. So listen, I want to just hold up this pen, which I haven't used yet. I was going to keep track of what round and everything. Evan, you still have to go for round 3, right?
Right.
Okay, so Mike and Buddy have done round 3. Evan.
Okay, I made the point that music, they're branches of the same tree, different genres. And I find it a little ridiculous that some of the greatest songwriters of all time, because they weren't rock per se, are still not in. And if any of these guys are in, you could tell me, but how do you not put Harry Chapin, Jim Croce, Richie Havens, Graham Parsons, Blaze Foley, etc., into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? So my third choice is going to be Harry Chapin, simply because not only was he a great songwriter, singer, guitarist, he was a great humanitarian.
Yes.
Who died too young. And he, Russell was talking about, the San Francisco area where Mike is from also, but he was from my turf. He was from Long Island.
Right.
I live in Queens, and when he died on the Long Island Expressway in his 40s, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, I heard, Evan, that Harry Chapin had the one for you, one for me philosophy. I do one show for you for charity, then one for me, one for charity, and he would alternate. Every other show was for charity. So,
but what a great artist, and all the artists I mentioned. So if people are like, oh, that's not really rock and roll, what's the difference? It's great music.
Can we all agree on that point that Evan just made?
I wouldn't argue Harry Chapin.
Yeah, and I mean just the fact that even though it's not.
I liked your mention of Richie Havens. He also definitely deserves to be.
And a tremendous live performer, Richie Havens. Look at Woodstock. Much more rock and roll than Woodstock.
He opened up. He was the opening act.
Yeah.
I think he is the unsung hero of Woodstock, Mike. I don't know how you guys feel, but they had the opening act wasn't there, and they threw Richie out there, and man, he just took the crowd. And
I saw him live many times. Tremendous performer.
All right, here's my third choice. Tommy James and the Shondells.
Of course, 100 million records the guy sold.
He's been
He's not in it?
100 million records.
He's not in it, though, is what I'm saying. That's
no. And if one of the criterions is that influence, in the 80s alone, Billy Idol covered Moni Moni, Tiffany covered I Think We're Alone Now. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts did another one of his songs. Of course, I'm drawing a blank, naturally. But I just think and like Evan said, over 100 million records sold. I mean,
And quality.
and quality. Yeah. Yep. And I'm not just saying that because he was on my show twice. He's a hell of a nice guy, but I even said that when he was on the show. All right. So that was my third choice. Now, just to let our viewers and listeners know, when we're done with all 5 rounds, and I'll let you guys know, I also have a list of right outside the cusp of about 20 names. We'll just give it a yes or a no when we're done, and then you guys throw in your choices too. Before we do round 4, I thought we'd, if we had, do a little show and tell if we have some memorabilia or something to show.
I got some stuff.
Or you can tell if you didn't come prepared to class. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Russ. What do you got?
I have an Elvis mug from Graceland.
Okay, put it in front of you. Yeah, there you go. You got that from Graceland.
Yes.
You know what? I'm a bad music fan because I've never been to Graceland.
Oh, wow. That's a trip you got to make.
Have you guys, Mike, Evan, have you guys been to Graceland?
Yes, I have.
Ev has. I have not.
I have a great story. I have a great Graceland story. I'll give you the 30-second version. They have a 1,000-page book on Elvis, the tour guides. And they say, you can ask any question you want about Elvis, what he ate, you know, who his buddies were. So my first question that pops in my head, I go, did Elvis ever hang out with Al Green? Al Green's from Memphis. And they go, we don't know. We don't know. So I stumped the panel.
Yeah, isn't Al Green's church close to Graceland?
It's like a mile away.
Yeah, yeah.
And Al Green peaked in the 70s and Elvis died in 77. So to me, it seemed like a natural question. So they go, well, Elvis used to hang out with James Brown and they would sing gospel songs together. But that wasn't my question, though.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Buddy, what was your thought on Graceland?
Oh, it was an amazing trip. It really, what it is, Graceland is if you take Hearst Castle, right, and give it to make the hick version, the hillbilly version of the Hearst Castle, and that's Graceland. And there's not, if for nothing else, you need to go see the Tapestry Room because that in itself explains who Elvis was to a T. There's a room that's wall-to-wall tapestries, but it's his pool table room. And the story is that Elvis was sitting there playing pool with his buddies, and one of his buddies came up to Elvis and said, look, my cousin just came into a bunch of tapestries and I need to hang them up. And Elvis bought them all and made the place into wall-to-wall tapestry everywhere. Every inch of it is all these ornate tapestries, and they would just shoot pool there. So it's really quite a place. I think you'd find it quite a tour if you ever went down there to check it out.
I had Ginger Alden as a guest, and she was Elvis's fiance at the time of his death. She, as a matter of fact, is the one who found him in the bathroom.
Oh,
and
wow.
One of the stipulations was, before she came on the show, we had emailed each other.
Talk about it.
She said, "Don't want to talk about it." So I said, "Can I just ask you one, question that I really won't cross the line?" Said, "Okay, but So anyway, I asked her. I mean, I couldn't think of anything. I had to get in that bathroom somehow, So I just said, what did you think when you saw him, lying on the bathroom? She's, I couldn't think of any other question to ask that would be okay. And she just kind of, I couldn't believe it. I didn't know if I should go right downstairs and tell people or wait and see what happens. But she, she absolutely wanted to keep it private. But
wow.
Evan, you have something to show us?
Oh, this comes with a little story.
Okay. Oh, Evan, I just noticed your shirt.
That's right.
All right.
I got my, speaking of memorabilia, I got my Steve Ludwig shirt.
Now I agree with, okay.
I go up to Al Green and I ask him to sign a couple of albums, and he starts singing "Let's Stay Together" to me as he's
Wow.
Holy smokes.
So my entire apartment is decorated with albums that are framed and autographed. Bobby Womack, Kid Creole and the Coconuts, all kinds of great acts. And I pulled this out for Steve. When I was a kid, my mother bought me the Beatles banks. And if you notice, there's a tassel on it. So each one has the tassel. This is when I graduated junior high. Then there's one from high school. Then there's one from college. Then there's one from grad school. So
Evan, we're both on the East Coast, and Buddy and Mike are on the West Coast. You ever want me to house sit, Evan? I'll be happy to. If you're not going to be home, you might have a few less items in the house. But
well, you want to know something? You're a much bigger Beatles buff than I am. One day I could sell you these.
Yeah, but I'm a retired teacher, so I haven't got the money to buy them.
No, I wouldn't bleed you. You get the friend price.
Okay.
You wouldn't get the dealer price.
Mike?
Well, that was Evans Paul from Yellow Submarine, which it was not done. Most people think Peter Max did the artwork,
Right.
but
Yeah.
not do it. But it looked reminiscent. One of the coolest movies ever. It's a lot of fun. And then the big surprise at the very end, for those of us that saw it the night it debuted, I was in Hollywood seeing it when it debuted, the Beatles live singing at the very end was very, very cool, because any of us that knew the Beatles or the histories, they hated their ABC Saturday morning cartoon show with a passion, but they loved this film. They gave their
and in case people don't know, you want to explain what happens at the end, Mike?
Well,
They come on live.
I forget the song.
All together.
All too much.
All together now. They come and sing it to close it, and they didn't even voice their own cartoon characters in the Yellow Submarine film, which got a re-release like 2-3 years ago, and they had cleaned it up and
tried to get my 9-year-old daughter to watch it. She couldn't sit through it though.
Well, they actually also then when COVID hit last year, I think in late March, they had a free I think Apple Music released it free online, and they had a sing-along where they had the lyrics underneath it. So it was a big event to help people, entertain people. And
yeah,
I think of nothing better. I mean, I went and saw Hard Day's Night and Help when they came out, and actually people will shoot me, but I because I love the music more in Help, that was my, I mean, how can you quibble and say that Hard Day's Night is not a masterpiece? Because it is, and it set the template for the Monkees and everybody that came to follow. And it's a brilliant film. But Help in color is so fun and goofy, and they were high at times. At least Lennon had said he was high at times making it. It was fun.
Yeah, they were. It was funny.
Wait for the film. It's in August. It's coming up from the guy that did Lord of the Rings, Peter. What's his name?
Peter Jackson.
Yeah, has got that one, and it's a more positive showing of footage that nobody's even seen. It was never released, a lot of the footage. So I can't wait.
I could even see more of Help in the Monkees than A Hard Day's Night in the Monkees. Help was like,
yeah, they were just doing goofy, wacky, because it opens with the I don't know where they are, the savages that want that ring that Ringo.
Yeah, the Indian, the whole Indian sect,
Basically, I'm wearing a shirt with ticket stubs from various places like the Med and some music venues, all New York based. But while growing up in LA through the 60s and 70s, I've got to go see and take dates to the Chateau Marmont that has, of course, all of that history. The Stones, the Doors stayed there. Pretty much everybody in rock music either trashed rooms there or stayed there. And then around 74, when the Roxy Theater was for music acts started, it actually didn't even open, and we were there opening night, and it was Rocky Horror Picture Show opened what would later become a strictly music venue. But I'll never forget that with all of those guys. Meatloaf was there, Tim Curry, and Lil Nell, who sat in my lap, because before the thing started, they would come crawling out into the audience and get all over it. You and Little Nell put her tongue in my ear, and I'm a teenager, and I was just going, wow, it's pretty cool. Rainbow Room. So the Rainbow Room is the place that I was actually taking the dates. That's behind the Roxy Theater on Sunset Boulevard. And that's a Janis Joplin, or not Janis Joplin, but some others have gone in there and kind of trashed that restaurant. But in the Bay
how
Area,
many dates did you leave with, Mike? That's what I want to know. You went into these venues.
well, there were never any any well-known acts in there. I think one of the members of Cheap Trick, and how long did it take the Hall to finally put Cheap Trick in? You know, decades or many years later, when they should have been put in, you know, long ago. But a couple of the members of Cheap Trick were there, the drummer and someone else. One night I went there, but usually there weren't any musicians in the place. In the Bay Area, though, you can actually tour like on Fulton Street, the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead commune homes, Janis Joplin's home, and several others are there. And then in Mill Valley, the place that Huey Lewis left when he moved oddly to the Midwest. I don't know why he'd moved from Marin County, but they have tours that will
couldn't afford the rent. Let me just tell you. I can tell you why he moved.
Oh, the rents.
All right, now.
Costly, snooty area. But yeah, his house was pretty well known. And Linda Ronstadt's place, she had a place not near, it wasn't F. Lee Bailey's, but it was another famous attorney, world famous TV type attorney. And she was like 2 houses down on Broadway Street overlooking Alcatraz.
My friend lived just around the corner from Bill Graham's place here in Marin County. Yeah, he lived, there's a turnoff to get to my friend's place, and then just after that was the turn off to get into the private driveway for Billy Graham. So
speaking of Bill Graham, when he died, it was a rainy night in the whole Bay Area, and it was the night. Here we're mixing in wrestling because Dave Meltzer, Wade Keller, and I had my Japanese Gong magazine wrestling editor Wally Yamaguchi and his wife. They all came, and Wally and his wife stayed at my house, but when the Hogan, it was like the night that John Lennon died, and Evans talked about that in New York. Well, we come out of the Oakland Coliseum where the very first Flair Hogan match occurred. It wasn't televised, it was just sort of a practice match. Heenan came out with him. Anyway, we're exiting, and it's rainy, we can't see, and I only lived a mile away from the Coliseum then, as Evan knows, and it's just so rainy we couldn't see, you know, more than a couple feet in front of us. And then we heard on the radio that Bill Graham's helicopter went down and died. I think that was 92, and that was pretty horrific because what a name that guy had in the Bay Area. I mean, for all those music venues, the Fillmore West, and a couple of his places on Gary Street, and the Bill Graham Civic, all of those great music venues.
Yeah.
You know, they still exist in part, not the Fillmore West, but.
Speaking of that, I went to see the Fabulous Thunderbirds at the Beacon Theater. Great show. Stevie Ray Vaughan was playing the Garden the same night. So the Thunderbirds show was at midnight. So who turns up, of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan to jam with the Thunderbirds.
Holy smokes.
And 3:30 in the morning, I'm at the stage door getting autographs, and Stevie Ray Vaughan couldn't be any nicer. So when he went down,
I'm so happy you said that.
Yeah, when he went down in the helicopter, it was really sad because he was a young guy. He was, you know,
what a legend! What a total legend!
At his peak, tremendous.
I have one thing to show you guys and all of our great listeners and viewers. Now, of course, you guys have heard of the Cavern Club in Liverpool. Beatles, for those who don't know, who are watching, Beatles played there from 61 to 65, where they cut their teeth really. Well, they demolished the old Cavern Club and rebuilt it across the street.
Yeah.
Well, when they demolished it, they saved some bricks. So can you guys maybe guess what I'm going to show you here? Now, here is part of a brick from the original Cavern Club. I do have a COA, a certificate of authenticity too, but this is from the archway going down right in front of the stage. So it's important, you know, it's the archway brick. So it's not just any brick, guys.
You have
It's
a
the
physical
archway
thing,
brick.
not an NFT. You have a physical, true piece. And if
Really?
anybody, I thought I was a Beatles fan, but I think Steve is copying me here.
Did I when I was on Buddy and when I spoke with Buddy and Evan on the wrestling and everything, wrestling coast to coast, did I show you the Strawberry Fields brick? I forget. I don't think so. I also have a brick, maybe next time, from Strawberry Fields was an orphanage, right? And anyway, they demolished that as well. And I have a brick from the original
Do
store.
you have the Felix the Cat brick?
Huh?
Felix the Cat brick. Felix the Cat.
Felix the Cat brick with a B? Is that?
Yeah. You don't remember that? Anyway.
I remember one of those.
Yes, you used to throw. I thought you said Felix the Cat.
Steve, one of those times I came into New York, first thing I asked Evan to take me to was the Strawberry Fields dedication place in New York in Central Park. And that was pretty memorable for me.
Yeah, I was at that ceremony. It was grim, boy.
Well, were you there? Yeah.
It was grim.
Buddy of mine, he's no longer with us. His name is Paul Gorish. He took that infamous picture of, I won't even say the scumbag's name, of Lennon signing his album. Later on came back and killed Lennon that same night. He's the one that took that picture, a buddy of mine. But anyway, that's for another show.
I'll tell your audience the famous John Lennon story. It'll take all of 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Mike and Buddy have heard this 400 times, but Madison Square Garden had a big wrestling show, and Bruno Sammartino's wrestling Sergeant Slaughter. Everybody walks out of the building happy, satiated, the bloodlust satiated. We walk out into the street, and there's just this really strange vibe in the air. People murmuring, huddled together. I walk up to an absolute stranger and go, "What happened?" The guy goes, "John Lennon just got shot." You could feel it in the air. It was so bad.
There was something wrong, yeah.
The rest of us were watching it on Monday Night Football.
What's that?
The rest of us were being told about it by Howard Cosell on Monday Night Football on the West Coast.
Because Mike will tell you the shows at the Garden ended right around 11 p.m.
It's curfew time.
Yeah.
Buddy, I wasn't watching Monday Night Football, Buddy. My phone rang about 11:10. Now, my wife at the time, well, she's a nurse now, but she was working the night shift, 11 p to 7 a at the hospital. And I thought it was Sue, my wife. I pick up the phone, and it's an old high school friend of mine, girl named Emily. I said, "Hey, Emily." She goes, "I can tell by your voice you didn't hear." And that's how I heard of it, from Emily. So, yeah.
Americans will tell you where they were when Kennedy was shot, when John Lennon was shot, when 9/11 hit, because it was all traumatic.
Yep.
It was all traumatic, yeah.
Okay, now on happier notes, we're going to go to round 4 now. I think we're at the beginning again. Did the circle? Buddy, you're first with this one.
Well, I wanted to bring up a British band, and Evan definitely covered one with Squeeze that was on my list, or early was on my list. But this band, again, meant a lot to me in the 80s and in the 90s. And I think their main songwriter is one of the most brilliant lyricists next to Paul McCartney. And that is Andy Partridge for XTC.
Ooh,
now, I
put
don't
him
know
right up there with the Big Mac, huh?
When you really look into his lyrics and see what he's written about, and the fact that he's been writing songs consistently since the late 70s, and XTC is such a slice of British life that's hand delivered to the listener in ways that even Pink Floyd can't do, even ways the Beatles can't do. And I don't know.
Easy now, buddy. Easy.
Have you ever heard of the album called Chips from the Chocolate Fireball, which is the band that he created called the Dukes of the Stratosphere? You ever heard of the Dukes?
Okay, I've heard of Dukes of the Stratosphere, sure.
They were a parody band made by XTC. Well, not a parody band, but a tribute band where Andy Partridge gave his loving tribute to all sorts of things, including the Beach Boys and the Beatles and other bands that influenced him by making an album of some of the greatest music ever created, including the song called Vanishing Girl, which I think, to me, is one of the most perfectly composed songs of all time. And when you look through the catalog of what XTC has provided over the years and how many songs they've done and how influential those songs are, the fact that they aren't in the Hall of Fame is a crying shame. I think they're they're even greater than XTC as far as their influence on British culture and British life. So I mentioned XTC and Andy Partridge in particular.
Buddy, has Andy Partridge, to your knowledge, ever been nominated?
No,
No,
no.
huh?
He is, the reason why is he won't play that political game. He's like Steve Miller. He's not that, he's a very shy kind of guy. He won't plug himself. XTC was never great at being an upfront promotional band. He did what he did because he had to write this music. It was stuff that was inside of him that made him have to write this stuff. It's not that he did it for money. He's like the opposite of Justin Bieber, who, you know, has no musical talent, but does what he does strictly because he can make money off of it and will write any insipid song as long as it makes cash for him. Andy Partridge agonizes over every song he's ever written, and touring to him is like the scariest thing possible. So he's one of those non-touring bands. When you're a non-touring band, you just can't make it with today's society. They don't recognize you and your greatness because you're not selling out all your songs for advertisements, or you're on tour every other year.
Yeah.
But I love Andy Partridge. He's just amazing.
Okay, interesting choice. After B, we go to E for Evan.
Okay. In my heart, I would go with Chaka Khan because she's my favorite living vocalist. But as I'm going to substitute her for Dionne Warwick, simply because the unbelievable body of work, especially with Burt Bacharach and Hal David, that music will be played forever. I mean, absolutely forever. And while Dionne doesn't touch Chaka as a stage performer, it's just 100 years from now, people will listen to those Bacharach David songs that Dionne Warwick sang.
Did Bacharach write theme from Valley of the Dolls?
Yes.
That's my favorite Dionne Warwick song. Gotta get off. Oh man, what a great song.
And who also did a version of that? Somebody else did a version of that?
Yes. Katie Lang, I think.
Was it Diana Ross?
Well, I know Katie Lang did also.
Yeah.
The invention of GPS, though.
But nobody could touch. Actually, you know who it was? I think it's Dusty Springfield. And I hope someone will check and see if she's in the hall, because if she ain't in the hall ain't worth an S. Dusty Springfield, come on.
Great.
That's not one of my choices. I just thought of that off the top of my head.
She was a white soul singer.
Oh, was she something else?
Yeah.
Evan, I have a question for you. You mentioned Chaka Khan. Should Rufus be in there with her?
Absolutely.
I think they are, but she's not in it. I think they're
Is
in
Rufus in the Hall of Fame?
Yeah, but not her as a solo artist.
Oh, okay. See,
Anna Ross is not.
Dusty Springfield was nominated in 1999 by Elton John.
Okay, so she's in.
okay.
So she's
Thanks,
in.
thanks, buddy.
You sure Rufus is in?
He's not in.
No.
That's a group. That was a
I
group
think they were
that
nominated.
was lead vocalist. I thought.
Yeah,
that,
I don't remember them being in.
I don't
Yeah.
think so.
Okay.
But I was gonna say, Do You Know the Way to San Jose hasn't aged well with the invention of GPS. So that song isn't as perfect. Next generation of kids won't understand the Do You Know the Way to San Jose. Because they'll just
House is not a home.
GPS.
Don't make me over.
that song is pretty incredible. Just watch
you know what?
the special on Dionne Warwick, and you'll see. Oh my God, what a singer!
I just had an idea for another next time we all get together, guys. Songs that are now or could never be made now. Songs that are politically incorrect. I mean, we could go through a whole.
Well, that's pretty much all of Frank Zappa's library. So let's keep moving.
No,
I mean, I'm even thinking of songs like Ahab the Arab.
Yeah, she was only 16. All of those, Go Away Little Girl, all of those songs would have to go away.
How about
Kid Creole and the Coconuts have a song.
Got a gun.
Kid Creole and the Coconuts have a song, Annie, I'm Not Your Daddy. And the lyric is, because if I was in your blood, then you wouldn't be so ugly.
And Julie Brown's Homecoming Queen's Got a Gun. You know.
Buddy, how about your Oingo Boingo? I Like Little Girls.
Yeah, that one
Right?
doesn't age very well.
And that was kind of a hit.
Yeah,
Good.
it's true.
I
Well,
can remember that,
I was
yeah.
a teenager at the time, so I could dance to that.
Yeah, you
and not
were
think
okay,
there was
yeah.
anything problem with it. But yeah,
Mike, your turn.
I hate to do this. I wasn't really not able to stay this long, so I'm gonna have to do my fourth and fifth. And
Okay.
I'm basically gonna jumble. I can stay till we discuss this, but I'm gonna throw in all of my names, but my remaining names. But I'm gonna start with. Let's see. Oh, Harry Nielsen. So let me just name these names. Harry Nielsen. Can you imagine? All right, these I have checked repeatedly. Paul Revere and the Raiders, not in. Love with Arthur Lee, the great Arthur Lee, not in. Ska Acts Like Madness, as Russ brought up, Madness should be in at some point. Badfinger, not in. Bad Company, Grand Funk Railroad, Bachman Turner Overdrive, Peter Frampton. How can he not be in?
Peter Frampton needs to be in there.
Alan Parsons, who I know, I was his event photographer on the West Coast, who produced some Beatles albums underneath George Martin, but also produced Pink Floyd and then the Alan Parsons Project. Go and get their iRobot. Just listen to iRobot if you want any inclination of how talented. That was his first one. It was an electronica piece. It also had a little bit later on, he did the Eye in the Sky. The prelude to that was Ricky Steamboat's music until somebody finked to Vince McMahon. He wasn't paying or acknowledging the artist, meaning Alan Parsons, for writing it.
Yeah.
Tears for Fears should be a first ballad or
Mike, sorry to interrupt. Alan Parsons, Beatles engineer as well.
Yeah, that's what I said. Beatles, underneath, he was not sole engineer, he was working underneath George Martin, but also Pink Floyd for Dark Side of the Moon.
Yeah.
Supertramp, Tears.
Oh, Supertramp isn't in? Oh man, I would have nominated him straight up.
Devo was on the nominees thing, but they didn't get voted in this year. They should be.
Wow.
But, let's see. Alan Holdsworth, a lot of people don't know, but he was in the super group from the UK called UK, late 70s, early 80s. Their 3 albums plus the live one from Tokyo, Out of This World. Alan Holdsworth is named by both Eric Clapton and Eddie Van Halen as the greatest guitarist of all time. I met him, interviewed him many times. I brought his writing partner from UK, the world's greatest electric violinist and keyboardist, Eddie Jobson, to Legends with Evan. Myself, we interviewed him for about 90 minutes on that show. But they all came, the UK supergroup, all members from King Crimson, not in the Hall of Fame, from Zappa's band, from Yes, who did get in finally. And I don't think Joni Mitchell is in. John Prine and John Cale, I'll leave you with those 2 legends. John Prine, who we lost due to COVID, total legend. How can Prine not be in this Hall of Fame if he's in our Hall of Fame, the 4 of us? But so I'm sorry to have dumped all those acts on you.
They're all hard to argue with as well. Them being in.
Devo at least got the nod, and I was thinking, well, between the 2, Devo and Kraftwerk, one of them is not going to get in, and Devo came after Kraftwerk. And maybe we're not as globally influential as Kraftwerk.
I think they'll be in eventually, Mike.
Yeah, they should be, because their shows are so much fun, and they sold out within hours for that the New Year's Eve show I told you about from like '77 in LA, and just were so much fun, and they still are. I shot them at an outdoor punk free concert to the public in Oakland. Russ might have heard. It's the Burger Boogaloo. And I backstage, I posed John Waters, the famous director, with all members of Devo, and minus the one who passed away. And the kid who's very talented drummer from Saturday Night Live, who was in the Seattle spoofy comedy show. What's his name? That actor comic. He played taking the slack.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? He was with the female in that Seattle recurring show, Seattle-ish or whatever that was called.
Yeah, he's on Seth Meyers now, right? The drummer.
Yeah, he's the
Fred
drummer.
Armisen.
Yeah. Fred Armisen played with Devo, so I have them with Fred Armisen and John Waters backstage at that outdoor Burger Boogaloo, and it occurs every summer. I'm not sure, because we're still in COVID, if it's occurring this year. A huge park in Berkeley, and I've shot a number of them until I moved away. But Russ or anybody, if you are in the Bay Area, go and see it, because just John Waters as the host introducing the acts and him crashing Donald
That's worth the
Trump.
price of admission.
Oh, he's always the funniest guy in the room, and always has great stories. And he went off on a rag when the thing started. It was a 2-day affair, and day 2 he went off. He started with like a 20-minute rag on Donald Trump. It was just out of this world hilarious, just off the top of his head, nothing memorized. And boy, there should be, if there is a trash Hall of Fame or a indie directors, he's got to be, you know, in there fairly close to all the other great indie directors.
Absolutely. So are you going to be leaving us now,
I
Mike?
got to leave you guys. I really apologize. I was thinking we were only going to go an hour and 15, but we're approaching an hour and 45 right now. So great conversation. I apologize. I bid you guys combate kudasai. Good luck and have fun with the rest of the show.
Thanks, Mike. Listen, don't watch the show on the replay, because now we're going to talk about you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I apologize.
No, thank you so much, Mike. I really
Had
let's
fun.
definitely do this again.
But thank you, guys.
Okay, Mike. We'll see you next time.
See you, Mike.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
It's just us.
All right. It's the Three Musketeers. We're up to round 5, but when we're done with round 5, guys, I do have something else. I have some more down that should be in. I just want a thumbs up or a thumbs down, and you guys can also add that in. Okay. All right.
Did you
Round
name your
5.
number 4? Did you get name your 4th line?
No, I didn't. No, thanks.
I'm trying to be host. I'm trying to be the host now.
Mike didn't steal my thunder, but I have Harry Nilsson on the list, and I was this way about it. How do you? First of all, before I give my reasons, how do you guys feel about Harry Nilsson being in?
Brilliant songwriter.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, vocally, he's not Al Green, but he's a great songwriter.
Yeah.
Was.
Yeah, Buddy, what do you think about Harry Nilsson?
Yeah, I'm
Being
trying
in?
to
Is he on the
think of-
cusp? Is he maybe not? Because he had his biggest hits by that he
It's a
didn't
little
write. Without
before
You.
my time. Yeah, I mean,
Okay,
you know,
Without You, Can Live If Living Is. That was written by Badfinger.
Oh,
And Everybody's Talking from Midnight Cowboy was written by
Great
Fred
song.
Neil. But
yeah,
he had more success as a songwriter. He
I
was
think
covered-
so. Yeah, and
Yeah.
a lot of them were, you know, keep in mind I was born in 1967, so a lot of his stuff was, you know, in that, you know, when I was 0 years old, or
I think I was wearing this shirt in 1967.
1967.
But
There was a lot of screwing in '67, the Summer of Love. That's why you're here, Russell.
no, I was born in 1967. So you're gonna have to go back 9 months.
They were ahead
Well,
of
Yeah.
all right, your parents were ahead of their time.
yeah.
Yeah. So yeah,
yeah.
I mean, obviously his songs are legendary. Again, and I don't want to diss like a band like the Go-Go's or the Foo Fighters, but I think there are some of those bands that should probably consider waiting, or or the committee should wait on them and bring in older folks who may not, not older folks, but people who don't have as many years left to enjoy the being nominated and being in the Hall of Fame.
I wondered when the Go-Go's got in this year, right? They got in this year.
Yes.
And I said to myself, I don't even know if the Bangles would have been in or not, but I think that kind of really hurts the Bangles' chances for years, because knowing the whole, they're probably figuring, okay, here's our girl group, But before the Go-Go's, I think the Shangri-Las should have been in. That's way before both.
Exactly.
Of them.
No, you're right. You're right. And the
Yeah.
Chandels and having other bands and other performers have been waiting for since the
LaBelle.
50s.
Highly influential. LaBelle, Patti LaBelle.
Oh, sure.
Patti
Yeah.
LaBelle. The Pointer Sisters
Mhm.
are not in the hall, and
we brought this up before. Too bad Mike is gone, but do you guys think Diana Ross should be in as a solo artist? The Supremes are in.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but put somebody in first before somebody's in twice.
Yeah, Eric Clapton's in 3 times.
Yeah,
How about that?
ridiculous.
Yeah, with 3
He
different.
deserves it.
I'm
I'm not going to argue that he
Yeah,
doesn't.
That's a good
what
point,
about the
buddy. He
people
does
who
deserve it,
Who were
yeah.
never put in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's
let's
It's not
do
like they don't have room. It's not like they
Yeah.
can't fit more people in there. I don't know why the class has to be so restrictive, you know?
By the way, I love the physical Hall of Fame because I'm a fanboy anyway, and they have so much tremendous
it,
memorabilia
Cleveland?
there.
Yeah.
It's great.
When I was in Cleveland, they were just building it. That was in
Mm.
1991. So I've never actually been to it. But my
Evan, you've
brother,
never been? I
I've never
forget.
been, but I
No.
believe the Funk Hall of Fame is in that area also. Maybe I'll do a double shot.
Well, I think you'd do Funk Hall of Fame first, knowing
It
you,
would
knowing
mean
your.
more to me, but
Yeah.
I'd enjoy both. I'm a music guy.
All right, round 5. So I'm
it's
confused.
you. It's you.
Did we do round? This is round 5. We're all finished.
Yeah, this is round 5, and it moves over to you. I'm playing host tonight.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Taking over your show. You're done.
That's why you're Buddy Sotello Esquire.
Thank you, master of the contract. Yes. So who is number 5 for you?
All right. I went with the B-52s.
They're
Ooh,
great. I've seen them. Great.
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely.
B-52s, Devo, like they're kind of neck and neck, but
No, B-52s would be ahead of
yeah,
these.
And they're unique.
Yes,
Nobody sounds like them. They're
Yep.
unique.
and I think they really started that kind of kitschy, kind of kishy, however you say the word, kind of
There
music.
wasn't a dance place that didn't play Love Shack in
Right.
the
Mhm.
90s. They
Yeah.
any place that had any dance going on, Love Shack would be played at least once per night.
Yeah, B-52s, I think when they first came out, it sounded like something new, like.
Seen
not
them
something-
live. It's like a party. It's great.
Yeah, yep.
Seen
Mhm.
them live a couple of times.
Yeah, I've seen them live once, right, Evan? It's like, and don't expect to sit down.
They
If
modernized the
you're in the
50s sound. They took that 50s sound and made it modern. And they're really, as you said, that's so unique. There really isn't another band that does that. Planet Claire is a tremendously well created song.
If guys, watching too, if you can catch Planet Claire on YouTube, I mean, it's great the way they perform it too.
And it sets such an amazing mood to
Yeah, it's so like spacey and
and 50s Jetson. It makes
Yeah,
you
yep.
feel like you're in that 50s
All the-
kind of
the
mode.
50s flying saucer movies and all those kind of things. Yeah,
Absolutely love them for it. But then
Yeah.
they were able to move that sound forwards, with things like Roll Misty Waters and
Mhm.
well,
Well, their album Funplex was cool as well. The whole album Funplex was good, and that was one of their later
Absolutely.
albums. Yeah.
no, they are legendary. Rock Lobster was a party anthem for the early 80s. Every party had that, right near the, I remember going, everyone in the party would go, when he would go down, 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 people would just wind up, lying on the floor
Yep.
and all jiggling. And then
Then they get back up.
Yeah, it would
Yeah.
start back up and everyone would jump back up.
Mhm.
And I mean,
Yep.
they understood how music could move a room. So I'm with you on that.
Okay. Evan, you good with my choice?
I love them.
Yeah.
I don't
Played
like.
them at Forest Hills. Did you tell me that, Evan? No. I
Yeah,
forget
yeah,
what it was.
yeah. I've
Yeah, I
seen
think
them
you
a
told-
couple
yeah.
times. I saw them in Central Park. It was amazing. I don't like tearing down bands. I don't like to do the they don't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I'd rather do these guys are deserving
Yeah.
and have been neglected.
Mhm.
Because they're all great artists.
Yeah.
So who's your nominee?
Me?
Yeah, you.
I'm gonna go back to where I started with great unsung R&B acts who have been out there 50 or 60 years. The Stylistics.
It's almost hard to believe they're not in. Really.
I mean, they're still touring, they're still headlining, they still play all around the world. And that music, You Are Everything, People Make the World Go Round.
Make up to break up.
Make Up the Breakup.
One of the greatest love songs ever.
I mean, I've probably seen them live 15 times. Like you were talking about the Happy Together tour, they have the 70s Soul Jam. So instead of the Turtles on top, you know, the Stylistics are on top.
I went with you to one of those concerts, Evan.
Oh my God.
The 70s Soul Jam.
Yeah, and they're still tremendous, and it's elegant, and it's beautiful, and I mean, I don't even grasp how a group that has, again, 100 million records sold, 20 hits, 50 years, 60 years out there, you know, how do you not put them in unless you do the very rigid, well, it's not exactly rock and roll, but I don't know.
There were too many in that don't fit into the rock and roll umbrella. That shouldn't keep them out. No. Yeah. I
mean, you can't even argue. You know, I get very tired of, you know, we're not kids anymore, obviously, but I get very tired of
physically we're not kids. Yeah, mentally, I think we'll always be kids.
When people rage, what does this artist have to do with rock and roll? Like it's somehow besmirching a holy space. I mean, the names I mentioned, whether it's country or folk or R&B, it's great, timeless music.
And that brings us back to the start. Before you give your choice, Buddy, bring us back to the start. It should just be the music hall or something like that. Something more. But I think, isn't it because it was started by Jan Wenner and Rolling Stone was considered a rock magazine? Maybe that's
Rolling Stone just said that Marvin Gaye's What's Going On is the greatest album of all time. So whether it's Rolling Stone or not, R&B counts, as does country, as does folk, as does Afro pop, as does rap. And people who do the rap is not music, rap is R&B's cousin. The DNA of rap is James Brown, George Clinton, and Roger Troutman of Zapp. That is the DNA. So if you like James Brown and you don't like rap, you're not quite getting it, because Funky Drummer, which was James Brown's drummer, is on probably 10,000 rap songs.
Right.
That rhythm. So to say it's not music is absurd.
Rap is modern, you know, using broadly over a couple of decades, but it's modern poetry, rap. You know what I mean? That's as close to poetry,
I was a club booker, and Steve met a lot of the acts that I booked. And we used to have hip hop night, and some of the acts were brilliant. And yes, like every decade, there's great music on the radio, mediocre music, commercial music, and utter crap. Every decade, including now. But to say there's been no good music since the 60s or 70s is just narrow-minded.
Yeah.
You became your parents. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Some of your audience is going to hate me, but I don't care. You know, I'm speaking from the heart.
I respect your opinion. I agree with your opinion, as a matter of fact.
Thank you.
All right, Buddy, I'm going to become the host again. Your turn.
And they aren't on your list of the ones that deserve to getting them thumbs up, thumbs down. They're without a doubt my number one band. The first time I looked through the list researching this and I saw them, I immediately put them to the top. And that is Jethro Tull.
Oh,
Jethro
great.
Tull, absolutely. If I had to stand up for any of these acts and say I only get to put one in, it would be Jethro Tull. I've seen them more than any other band. And in about 1999, Ian Anderson came to the Marin County Civic Center Theater, which is only about 500 seats. And he did his flute playing with a Portuguese lady who did the violin. Musically, I've never been so enchanted in my entire life. He took an audience of 500 people and wove a spell, a musical spell over all of us. We were all transfixed. We couldn't move. We couldn't breathe. We did everything according to what he did on stage.
Yeah.
Ian Anderson is on a level of a Da Vinci or a Bach or a Beethoven or a Thomas Edison or one of the great minds of our time.
Yeah,
Ian
yes.
Anderson.
Mhm.
Okay, it's not just he's an amazing flutist. He has seen and done more things in his lifetime as a musician than probably half of these bands all crammed together because of his lifetime experience and everywhere that Jethro Tull has been, all the things Jethro Tull has done. And like you talked about with the B-52s, they have their own style of rock music that is duplicated by nobody else. And without a doubt, the fact that they have done it throughout the decades and are still selling out arenas and still performing at such a high level that Ian Anderson is getting close to being done, but he's not done yet, makes him a legend in rock and roll. And I can't believe he's not in.
Yeah.
I'm shocked they're not in. I mean, again, what's the criteria? You have brilliant musicians,
Politics,
making
Buddy. Yep.
making immortal art, selling out arenas for what, 50 years, 50 or so years?
But like XTC, Ian Anderson will not kiss anybody's butt in order to be in a Hall of Fame. It means nothing to him.
I assumed they were in. I can't believe it.
But they aren't. And that to me was the number one omission, because I've been to the concerts that I have been to with Jethro Tull were different than any other musical concert that I've ever been to. That's why I keep going, because it's a different experience each time. And every time I've gone, it's been sheer magic.
Evan, before you and Mike joined us, Buddy and I were setting up here on Zoom. And Buddy, remember I told you that my wife Sue and I went out to dinner with someone, a couple, our friends, Ron and Suzanne. And Ron wanted to call in when he heard we were doing this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame show. You know why? His main complaint, Buddy, was that Jethro Tull is not in the Hall of Fame. And
I'm not alone. I'm not alone in this. And every year that nominations come out and they aren't even nominated, I go through the roof. I had no idea Supertramp.
He must, like you said, politics. He must have said something that rubbed somebody the wrong way.
He won't kiss anybody's ass, and he doesn't need to, and it means nothing to him. And so, same with Andy Partridge of XTC. It doesn't mean anything to those guys. That's why they don't get in. You have to campaign to get yourself into the Hall of Fame, and he won't lower himself to do that.
Right.
Why should he?
Sex Pistols refused to attend when they were inducted.
And they deserve to be in.
Yeah,
absolutely.
they are in, but they refused
they are.
to go to the, they refused to go.
Oh, but
Fun fact
if nominated, I refuse to serve.
Yes. Fun fact about Ian Anderson. Who is his son-in-law? Either of you guys know? And you both know this person. An actor.
Oh, I don't know that his son-in-law was a famous actor.
Andrew Lincoln from Walking Dead. Rick.
Wow, from The Walking Dead.
Yeah, he married his daughter. He married Ian Anderson's daughter. Wow. Yeah.
There's
there
one for the, we're big Walking Dead fans, so used to it anyway.
All right, now I have a list here, guys, of some of them we mentioned, but just give a yes or a no, a yay or an nay of other acts that aren't in, but should be in.
Yeah, I have a list of about 40 that I would have nominated today.
Yeah, this list is maybe 20. So we'll just go through it quickly.
I could list 100 R&B acts. We'll do this for 5 hours.
Yeah. Well, just so you know, Jethro Tull was at the top of the list, buddy. Okay. All right. Now, going back to the idea that it's not just Rock Hall of Fame. Of course, this is going to open up a bucket for so many others to come in. Willie Nelson.
Of course.
Sure.
Right? Yeah. So, I mean, I can think of 10 country singers. Okay. King Crimson.
Yeah, we already mentioned him.
Yeah, okay. Wu-Tang Clan.
Yeah.
That one I would be on the bubble with. Maybe I maybe would want to see if they could. They're still technically around, I guess.
Yeah.
So they could maybe make some more music.
Mm-hmm.
I would maybe before I would put in other groups before I would bring in the Wu-Tang Clan.
I think Wu-Tang Clan, at least for me, yes, in the future I could see, but I'm maybe siding with Buddy a little bit on this one, Evan, that, maybe a little more.
Check out Ghost Dog, Jim Jarmusch's film. RZA from Wu-Tang Clan did the soundtrack. Great soundtrack.
Oh, really? Okay.
Ghost Dog, Way of the Samurai. You ever see that? Tremendous movie.
No.
Yeah.
All
I've
right,
heard of it.
Procol Harum,
Hmm.
Whiter Shade of Pale,
Oh,
a bunch of them.
That's
But you're
about,
not
yeah, I wouldn't,
okay.
Procol Harum wouldn't stroke my flame
Mhm.
to nominate him.
Okay, Evan, I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay.
yeah, why not?
I say yes. Brian Eno.
Sure, genius.
Yeah,
All right, yeah,
I'd have to go. Yeah, I mean,
wouldn't be
some.
totally passionate about him, not like I am for a couple other names.
By the way, some of them on my list here, I don't agree with. I think shouldn't be in, but I put them on anyway. Joe Cocker.
Yeah.
Oh
great.
yeah,
Yeah, okay. Joe Cocker,
Yeah.
yes.
slam
Three
dunk.
Dog Night.
Slam dunk. They definitely belong in.
So I have an itch on my nose. Okay. Cool and the Gang.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Based on their early work, not when they sold out in the 80s.
Yeah. We're not going to count Celebrate as one of their big songs.
Oh,
or-
that's huge. Yeah, absolutely. Celebrate belongs in.
To me, they were an R&B act that turned into a pop act. But their early stuff is so great that they're more than deserving.
All right. So they're in for all three of us. Okay. I'm not a big fan of, I am, but not a big fan of heavy metal. So I don't know that much about them, but Megadeth seems to keep coming up as they should be in, but aren't. I'm not that familiar with a lot of the stuff. So are we all
They're
kind of on the
pretty
same
famous.
page?
They're pretty famous. I think
Oh,
they
no,
would-
I know of them for sure, but you know,
I don't think any of us are huge.
Yeah, we're not metal guys, so
yeah.
we don't have
I
the
mean,
expertise.
we're freaks, but we're not metal freaks. Okay. Mentioned it before, Badfinger.
Yes.
Yeah, you know something? Listen, I love Badfinger, but they had maybe like 5 hits,
That's
So they're
five
all
more
big
than
ones.
most groups have.
5
Yeah,
big ones.
and they're big ones. They were
Yeah.
really big hits that keep getting played.
Okay.
You know, I always think about, you know, if they're stuck in their era or can they move forwards and
Mhm.
influence other bands of other eras with their sound. I think Badfinger definitely did.
Okay. The Commodores.
Yeah, I love the
Same
Commodores.
thing. Early on, they were great, and then
Yeah.
they went really sappy commercial.
Yeah. Well, okay. And one step after that, Lionel Richie as a solo artist.
Oh God. Not for me, but
I say yes for the Commodores, not for Lionel Richie, though. Buddy?
that stuff was like cookie cutter.
Yeah, you
Pop
get very
school.
close to where pop is and rock, where pop begins and rock ends.
Yeah, I think we gotta go pop/rock. Yeah, because they kind of like, what's that, a Venn diagram? It's somewhere in the middle with something.
Right, but Lionel Richie had a lot of big songs, so you know I can't exactly leave him off of the list. I think I'd nominate him.
I mean,
Okay.
you could put him in for his work with the Commodores.
Yeah, that I would go with for sure.
Brick house, slippery when wet. Yeah.
Cyndi
Early stuff
Lauper.
was great.
Cyndi Lauper.
Oh yeah, all right,
Yes.
Cyndi
Yeah,
Lauper.
how is she not in?
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Don't look at me. She was on my
Yeah.
list of someone
Mhm.
that
Okay.
deserved to be in.
This one I said no on only because I thought he had not enough hits, but Joe Tex.
Oh yeah, great
Yeah.
performer. Yeah.
I gotcha.
I'm gonna embarrass myself if I say I haven't heard any of his songs.
Okay, well, now there you go, because he hasn't got that many hits. So I said no for Joe Tex, although I
So I
love.
would say no because I really don't know who he
Yeah.
is.
Hmm.
Sorry.
Okay. You have Evan's vote, the late Joe
Tex
Tex.
was great.
Yeah. I had you mentioned Jim Croce before. Was he around long enough to
Oh,
be?
yeah.
I don't care.
Yeah. Okay.
Those-
Because,
whatever he did was enough.
Mhm.
Tremendous.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's one I cannot believe is not in: Neil Sedaka.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, he's so lounge like.
Maybe yes, it's-
I'm not sure if he gets rock credentials.
He's
You know.
certainly more pop, buddy. That's for sure. Yeah.
And it's almost like a lounge act in
Hmm.
a lot of ways.
Although
Great
Happy Birthday, Sweet
songwriter.
16, Calendar Girl.
Great songwriter.
And he had that comeback with Elton John in the 80s. Yeah, I would put him in.
I would.
Anyway.
Okay.
Herman's Hermits.
Yeah, great.
I know they're, some people think they're lightweight, but my God, they had
Hit after hit.
15 to 20 hits. Yeah, bona fide top 40 hits. You know who
I only
you know
know
who they-
Henry VIII.
Yeah, okay. And Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter, and
Oh yeah.
Peter Noon, great showman. When he have you ever seen him, either of you guys?
Yeah.
Good show, right, Evan?
Yeah, I go to a lot of oldie shows. I've seen him
Yeah.
several times. Good performer.
Now for this one, I said no, only because I didn't think he had that many hits. Rick James.
Oh, God,
he
no,
was
he-
great.
I know he's great. I know but how many albums has he had?
The Super Freak itself is one that.
Yeah, but I know that. But just for one song, I don't know if that's.
He had a bunch.
I know it's not one song. I misspoke there. I know he had certainly more than one hit.
Fire,
Yeah, no, I
in the
put
Fire
Rick
with
James
Tina
in.
Marie.
Okay, so he's
Busting Out of L7's a great album.
okay. So Rick
And
James
his
should be in 2
image
out of 3.
and his stage performance have influenced all sorts of bands since
Yeah.
then.
Hmm.
So
I saw
everyone wants
Rick
to be
live.
like it.
I love Rick James. Don't get me wrong. I just didn't think
And
he had-
what Rick did was he mixed funk and punk, funk and rock. So when they argue it's not rock, he had a rock edge to him. So
Yeah, I
did
agree.
Cameo.
I
Cameo had
agree.
a rock edge to him. So
I
did
agree.
Funkadelic.
Yep. Okay. I have 2 more. Then I'll throw it out to you guys. Junior Walker and the All Stars.
Oh, I love
Plenty
Junior
of
Walker.
hits.
I've seen him perform
How could they not be in?
at the
Plenty of
Cattle
hits.
Club. He is
Yeah.
fantastic.
He's
Back in
not now,
1990.
but yeah, great.
Love
Yeah, okay.
Junior Walker. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And my
Underrated.
last-
A lot of people don't know him. So
Right.
I don't know
Yes.
if you get it.
Mhm. My last on the list was there's a slash here. Sonny and Cher or just Cher?
Sonny and Cher, why not?
And
Mhm.
Cher, well, Sonny and Cher I thought was really pop, but Cher I think moved into the rock area by herself. So I would probably I'd maybe make it more Cher than I would Sonny and Cher.
Before the 2 of them. Okay.
Yes.
Mhm.
I don't consider them a rock act. I consider them
Yeah, they're pop. They're pop.
yeah,
Yeah.
a real pop group,
Mhm.
especially with the TV show.
Yeah. Okay. Now, that's my list. Buddy, you had some,
Oh gosh,
Mhm.
yeah.
and
And I'm
Evan,
surprised
you know-
they didn't make your list, actually.
go ahead. All right, go ahead.
Boss Skaggs,
Boz Scaggs was great.
Yes. Okay.
absolutely. Blue Oyster Cult.
I'm on the cusp there, buddy.
Oh, they were
Not saying they're
they
not
were-
great, but
in high school. They were right there with Van Halen and Rush
yeah,
and
I know.
Led Zeppelin. If you listen to those 3 bands, you were also listening to Blue Oyster Cult's Don't Fear the Reaper,
Of course. Yeah.
Godzilla.
Yeah.
They made a serious dent in the heavy rock and roll scene back
Mhm.
at that time.
Okay.
Peter Frampton, we had mentioned before.
Has to be in.
I mean, it's the best live album ever recorded
Mhm.
and gets play. It's such a great live album. There are no studio versions of any of his songs.
Yes, right.
They only play the one there. We had mentioned Dick Dale. Emerson, Lake and Palmer I saw live, and that
Yes.
when was it Palmer would play with the keyboard on his back. They would lower the piano down from the ceiling vertically, and he would play on his back.
Yep.
That was showmanship. You
I saw
gotta-
them at Asbury Park.
Yeah.
LP. Yep. And
You
I
gotta-
I met Keith Emerson. I have a picture with him. And about maybe a year later, he took his life.
Oh, I am really amazed that Evan did not nominate Tower of Power.
Cow Power's great. So is Average White Band. They tour together.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, Tower of Power, though, from the Bay Area, and really, you can't have the fabric of the Bay Area from the 70s on to today without working the Tower of Power as part of its soundtrack. They're a big
Lenny
part.
Williams, the lead singer, he's great
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Pat Benatar deserves to be in the Hall of
Tremendous.
Fame.
tremendous.
with
Pat
without a
Benatar.
doubt.
Mhm.
Think of all the songs she did. Billy Idol deserves to be in the Hall of Fame because you also can't weave an 80s soundtrack without like Eyes Without
Good
a
point.
Face.
All right, that's a good when you just put it that way. Yes, okay, I can say that.
Yeah, the 80s
Yeah.
doesn't exist without throwing them in there, throwing him in there.
Hey,
And
okay, just to interrupt 1 second. Billy Idol, would you say he's more punk or new wave? There is a distinction.
New Wave. He was New
Yeah,
Wave.
okay. Yeah.
And his New Wave stuff was the heart of dancing and clubs and parties of that 80s time. Rock the Cradle of Love, Eyes Without a Face, Dancing with Myself.
Rebel
Those
Yell,
things-
White Wedding.
Yeah, those are just
Yeah.
ingrained
Mhm.
in the 80s. And you can't
Yes, okay.
have a story of the 80s without at least one Billy Idol song in there. I dare you to,
Yeah.
to do that. I personally would love to see the Pointer Sisters in there because again, we lost all the members and
Mhm.
Not all, most of them,
Oh, is someone left still?
I believe so, yeah.
Thought
Are you-
we just lost. We lost
Are you
the
in
last
with the-
member.
Are you with the Pointer Sisters, Evan? Should they be in?
Sisters were Great, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And then Boston is not in. And Boston almost made my number one.
Yeah. Is Foreigner in?
Fine.
Because Boston and Foreigner, I go like 1 and 1A.
Boston and Foreigner are not in.
Yeah,
And they both deserve to be in.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
And
I would go
Jay
more
Giles-
Boston than Foreigner, although I wouldn't object to Foreigner being in it either.
the Jay Giles band I loved in the 80s. They may not have had a long enough list of hits, but one band, and I'll end up with this as my final one, and they almost made my number one also, was the Meters. Man, do I love the
yeah,
Meters.
the
Well, mm-hmm. That's-
And they have some legit rock and roll hits, and they played for so many years. You had one of the Van Dross brothers as part of the Van Dross brothers as part of it. They're really unrecognized. Oh, Zigbu, the drummer, is from Santa Cruz, so that's another California connection.
There you go.
And when I first listened to them, it just changed my whole view of Zydeco music and how you could work it into rock and that whole Cajun sound and how that Cajun sound could be worked into rock and roll to amazing degrees.
Are there any Zydeco singers? I think of course, Buckwheat Zydeco. He's one of the
No, the Meters. That's why the Meters should be in there. Again, a unique sound that they had all to themselves, and there's never been a band like them. So that's my omissions list.
Okay, Evan, any?
You guys don't have to do the yes or no because you're not gonna be familiar with some of them, but my God, Claus Nomi, he mixed opera with rock, and nobody sounded like Claus Nomi. Did not have a lot of hits, big enough to make it to Saturday Night Live, but really an unsung hero who died young. Kid Creole and the Coconuts, tremendous live band.
Kid Creole's great.
They evolved out of Dr. Bizarre's original Savannah band, who were just brilliant. And, the first album was a big hit. Cherchez La Femme was a big hit.
Yeah.
But they did 4 or 5 albums that were all genius, but they didn't last long. But I'm just saying on sheer genius alone. Albert Collins, Buddy Guy, if he's not in. I mean, there's a million blues.
Oh, Buddy Guy better be in.
I don't know, but if he's not, it would be criminal. Teddy Pendergrass, the Dramatics, the Delphonics, the Moments, all the great R&B acts that were neglected.
Mm-hmm.
Buddy Guy was inducted in 2005.
Thanks, Buddy.
Because he deserves it. But Albert Collins isn't in, and Albert Collins was an unbelievable showman. Rufus Thomas, tremendous showman.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn Campbell.
Oh, I
How
know.
was Glenn Campbell not in? Because,
and you know what, Evan? You could, people might say, well, he's country, but he was with the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
That famous LA backup band, not hardly backup, but yeah, he should definitely be in.
Of course. I've been to thousands upon thousands of concerts. Probably the 2 or 3 greatest concerts I ever saw. Al Green, 1975. Al Green is in. Fela, who was just rejected, the king of Afropop. It was unbelievable. And like I said earlier, the Spinners with Felipe went on lead.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'll mention LaBelle because they were ahead of their time. And I mean, I could go on and on. I can name 100 R&B acts that deserve to be in, but won't even get nominated because they're under the radar. But
before we
Bobby Rush is 87.
Bobby Rush is your man. Yeah,
put Bobby Rush in the Hall of Fame while he's here.
Before we tie it up, Buddy, how about you with a couple of concerts that stand out in your mind? I know you've mentioned a few throughout the show, but anything else that comes to mind?
Well, they would probably never get nominated in a million years, but I know Evan and myself are big fans of Fishbone.
Fishbone's great.
I would love to see Fishbone nominated for.
They won't get nominated. They're so ahead of their time. People don't even get them.
I know, but they were that was a wild at the Warfield in San Francisco. I remember actually participating in a mosh pit. So
they're still out there. They're still performing. They're great, Fishbone.
Yeah. Well, they have that crazy history with one of the musicians trying to kidnap the other ones. I don't know if you know about that story, but so many great influential bands. Also was a big fan of Danny Gatton. He would never be nominated.
He died young.
Yeah, he committed suicide, and I think that they
great
probably,
guitarist.
Yeah, he was an amazing guitarist. He's my favorite guitarist of all time. So I don't know if he'd ever get mentioned, but I'd love to see them.
Roy Buchanan.
I'm sorry.
Roy Buchanan.
Yeah. Well, he was Les Paul's protege. Danny Gatton was Les Paul's protege, and much like Dick Dale, they had that Americana sound. He had that Americana sound going for him that I just particularly love. Speaks much to my heart. So
Big J McNeely, honking sax. People don't even know these guys. They're not going to get nominated.
No. All right. Well, okay. I'm sorry, Buddy. I just stepped on. Were you going to say something, Buddy?
No. Okay. I'm saying that sometimes there's ones in your heart that you'd love to see nominated, but deep down they'll never make it. So
why don't we bring it to a close this way? If we were in charge of the Hall of Fame, what would be the top 3 criteria to get into the Hall of Fame?
Greatness, uniqueness, longevity. I mean, what does classic mean? Classic means it's great and it survives. It lasts.
Greatness to me is kind of a subjective term. I could see longevity because that could certainly be, uniqueness it's tough. Like what would the criteria be? Like
I always look at it as were you a pioneer? Were you somebody that set something forwards in a way musically that influenced bands after you were done performing, or while you were performing, other bands tried to simulate the kind of sound that you put forward? Because
so influence is definitely should be on the list.
I mean,
I think that's important to me.
Yeah. What Steve said earlier, you have to get past labels because labels only hurt. I mean, what's rock and roll spirit? You're a rebel. You're going to do what you want to do. You don't care what people think. I put in Sun Ra. I put in the Art Ensemble of Chicago. And people are going to go, they're jazz artists, but they had that rock and roll spirit. They didn't care. They're going to play what they want to play.
Yeah. That's why, it'll never be, I don't think the name would ever be changed, but I do feel it has to be a broader title, but it's not going to be. But
you want to know something? Back in the day, they used to say, he has good ears. He has good ears. So somebody like Steve will say, okay, my favorites are the Beatles, but I'll listen to Sun Ra. I'll listen to something that's out there, that's outside, my experience. I want to expand my musical horizons. by labeling everything and making ridiculous criteria, I think it hurts this this Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to have people fighting online, that's not rock and roll. What are they doing? Why did they nominate them? That great music is great music. And if you understand anything about rock and roll, back in the 60s and 70s, when Bill Graham and other promoters did shows, they would have a blues act with a rock act, with a jazz act, with a folk act. It didn't matter. Why does it matter today?
Yeah. Buddy and Evan, I'm older than both of you, but in the 60s, the radio, the top 10 would be the Beatles, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald.
Yeah, everything, mix.
Yeah, there was no just tunneling of just, if it was a good song, it's a good song.
UMass Aquila from Africa, Grazing in the Grass.
That's their big, yeah.
They'd have gospel songs.
Mm-hmm.
Oh Happy Day, Edwin Hawkins singers.
Mm-hmm.
You would never hear a gospel song on top 40 radio today.
No, I can remember we had a couple hits, spoken word, that made the top 10. It was.
I mean, why regiment it where this is a hip hop station, this is a rock
because
station?
that's where we are now. I mean, you look at 350 cable channels. We're into segmented entertainment where it's you don't want to share entertainment with a wide audience. What you want is to just get the dedicated numbers of mega fans that love your type of music so much they'll do anything to pay $1,000 a seat to go attend, and you don't care about the general audience of people that want to pay 10 to 15 bucks to go see.
But this is a Hall of Fame. This is supposed to be for the people. This is for the public. This isn't,
Yeah, but the public has lost their attention span, so they only want stuff that deals directly towards their segment of specific interest, and they don't want to hear anything else.
Yeah. By the time this show airs, I should have done this research to show you what a bad host I am. I should have done some research before, but I'm going to look to see if there are specific criteria that they have. And I'll bet if they do, they haven't followed it. So
that, or it specifies what flavor lipstick you need to put on your lips to kiss the asses of the particular committee members involved. They say this one likes cherry lipstick, the other one likes strawberry. So you got to make sure not to kiss their ass with the wrong lipstick.
My final thought that I would like to share is, of course, McCartney got in with the Beatles the first year that they were eligible. But he didn't show up. McCartney didn't because of silliness. He and the other Beatles weren't getting along or something, some bullshit, but he didn't show up. And he was eligible in his first year of eligibility as a solo artist. Rock would have nothing to do with him. Second year, third, I think it was 4 or 5 years after he was eligible, they finally allowed him in as a solo artist. And I'm sure that it was political, and they were just saying, screw you, Paul. You didn't come to our. So there is politics that it's undeniable.
It's a shame because enjoying music shouldn't have to deserve that, or what makes somebody have a great career shouldn't involve those kind of politics, but it does.
Yeah, and
anything that's a popularity thing that doesn't have set criteria, like you're saying, there's no objective criteria, and it's up to judges and voters. That's always going to be subjective.
Yeah.
And, justices.
Buddy, Evan, this was on me. I wanted you guys on much sooner than this, and time just got by me. I would love to do this more often, to talk about all forms of pop culture. I know we're all movie freaks too, and
TV.
Dr. Mike Lano, TV. I hope you guys will come on again.
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the past COVID year when we were basically under house arrest, I've been watching one great indie film after another. Some of these independent filmmakers are tremendous, and they deserve being spoken about and honored. And you probably could get some of them on because it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Yeah. Okay. Guys, I can't thank you enough for coming on, and I'm glad to hear that you have committed to coming back. And it was just a blast. I'd loved having you guys on, and I look forward to doing it again.
I said no tears, and now I'm going to cry.
What should I go? What should I do?
Thank you,
Thank you,
guys.
Steve. This
Love
is
having
great.
you on. Take care.
And now, folks, it's time to say goodnight. We sincerely appreciate your patronage and hope we've succeeded in bringing you an enjoyable evening of entertainment. Please drive home carefully and come back again soon. Good night.